Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System?
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, shows, and music from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Jeremy Scott.
Oh, no, Mama doesn't dream about you anymore, Wally. You wouldn't know the old girl now.
Yes, I would. I'd know you any time, any place.
Anywhere. You're repeating yourself, Walter. That's the speech you made the night you proposed.
Yeah, I know that you still remember it.
Of course I remember it. If I didn't remember it, I wouldn't have divorced.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
How you guys doing? This is Recotopia, episode 65. 65. I'm Chris Atkinson.
I'm Jeremy Scott.
And once again, acknowledging the chat who's come out here to watch us on a Tuesday, talk about movies. Today's big recommend is His Girl Friday from 1940, continuing a theme that I've got going, comedies from the decades and going up and up and up and blah blah blah, and this is 1940s and whatever. Anyway, how you doing today, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Do you have you already planned out the rest of the decades? Because
No.
Oh, okay. I considered making next week's big recommend a comedy that I know you and I both love, but I don't want to take it if that's one that you're going to hit on your way up the decades.
No, yeah, that's fine. And if you did choose one that that I was planning on, I'd find something easily that would slot in. So Don't worry about that.
All right.
But no, I have not plotted it out. I think of these things a week or so before.
Awesome.
It's time to go. So anyway, do you have any small recommends today?
It's no big deal.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
I do. They're not movies for the most part because I hosted my nephew for this weekend before his parents could come pick him up after college. And we watched Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania the first night. And I'm not recommending that shit.
Yeah, you said no movies, so yeah. This is almost like this is a warn, like low key warn that you just did.
Yes, I hated that movie, but it was fun watching it with the nephew. And Paul Rudd is charming. But then the next movie we watched was His Girl Friday, and my nephew enjoyed that with us as well. So and that's the big recommend. So my first small recommend is going to be something I've tweeted about. Many of you may have seen this tweet, and it's Kevin Smith's YouTube video on the People Magazine YouTube page. There he is right there. If you go to my Twitter, jscotttn, it's the pinned tweet. That video is right there. It's 34 minutes long, and I think it's one of the best 34 minutes you can spend. Here is a man that is beloved by many for various reasons, whether it's his affinity for weed or his films that he makes or his talks that he gives. You and I went and saw him at the Ryman. He's a very good storyteller. And he has made this video that is so candid and so open about his journey. He very recently spent a month in a mental health facility, inpatient treatment, for what he, I think, loosely calls a psychotic break. He had, for years, been playing the role of this Kevin Smith he calls the other guy, who's really funny and loves movies and is really charming and outgoing and directs things. And over time, his true self got smaller and smaller. And I love the way he describes this. He says, one day I went looking for the real Kevin and I couldn't find him. And I thought, all that's left is the other guy. And that's when he went to this facility. And the first thing the doctor said when they were bringing him into the facility was, well, of course you're still there. The other guy would not have brought himself to this facility. And listen, I've done a lot of therapy personally. I'm a mental health advocate. Most of you know that. But he speaks so knowledgeably and intelligently. The way that a Neil deGrasse Tyson can take physics and help you understand it in terms you know. He does this with mental health. He teaches you in this video tactics to stay in the present instead of living in the future or the past. I've done a lot of deep thinking after watching this video, and it's something that I will revisit and watch again. So there you go. That's my first small recommend. Find 34 minutes somewhere in your next week and go listen to this man tell his story. I'm not sure he's ever going to make another movie. He's not smoking weed anymore. He just wants to focus on loving himself. And that is huge because so many of us can't do that. So there you go. That's my first small recommend. Kevin Smith, People Magazine's YouTube page, also the pinned tweet on my Twitter. There you go.
Another thing you'll get out of this too is something that a lot of people don't really recognize a lot of times, is that he was talking about how trauma works on the brain, and like people will say something to the effect of like, well, that's not that bad. I had something worse or whatever. And he's basically saying it doesn't really matter what kind of trauma it is, or how the brain doesn't distinguish between degrees of trauma.
Right.
Something traumatic happened and you're going to feel this way, whether it was really like on the low end of the scale or whatever you want to call it. And he's basically saying there is really no scale when it comes to the brain,
right,
to this type of thing. So
yep,
that was one thing I got out of that too. And yes, I would second this recommend on this video. Going on into the movies, a movie that I had seen a few times before, wanted to revisit it, is Albert Brooks' Modern Romance from 1981. Have you ever seen this, Jeremy?
I have not, but I just today was thinking about Defending Your Life, another Albert Brooks movie.
Another good one.
I've seen almost all of them, but this is not one of them.
Oh, this is so good, man. So Albert Brooks plays a guy, like, I don't know if he's likable actually in this. I mean, he's likable in a way where it's funny watching him, but like if you had to interact with this person on a daily basis, it would drive you mad. The very beginning scene of Modern Romance is him calling like he and his girlfriend are going to have this dinner. And he's like, this isn't working out. We should break up. And apparently this has happened many times before. And the girlfriend is like, so what do you want me to do here? Like, this is, this always happens with you. And he goes, no, this is it. I think it's over. He said, well, what, do you not love me anymore? He goes, no, love's not the problem. I just don't think we work or whatever. And so like, of course, immediately after he breaks up with her, he can't stop thinking about her and wants to get back with her. And there's a tremendously long, it doesn't feel, I'm not saying this as oh my God, you're watching this movie and it feels so long. It's an hour and a half movie, but there's a whole like big, like 20, it's got to be about 20-minute sequence where he is by himself talking to himself, going like debating on whether to call this person, or like going through his Rolodex and calling another girl that he knows, or he is an editor of films. He is on this one movie, the space movie or some sort that George Kennedy is in. And James L. Brooks plays the director of this movie, which is kind of funny. Albert Brooks and James L. Brooks have no relation.
Yeah.
But Albert Brooks does, his brother named Bob Einstein was, because his name was also Albert Einstein before he changed the name for obvious reasons. His name, Bob Einstein, Super Dave Osborne, is in this movie. And so there's a little scene with him, and because one of the things that he does to try to get over the breakup is like, running is going to be my life now. I'm going to go and I'm going to start running. And he goes to like a shoe store, and this is where he runs into Super Dave Osborne basically. And like the guy, this guy's like the best salesman of shoes ever, basically. Like mocks Albert Brooks for like what shoes he's looking at, tells him to go to these shoes, tells him that he needs to buy this suit, this track suit, and he needs to buy a second track suit. And oh, by the way, you need to buy this and this and this and this and this. And of course, on the very first day he tries to run, he doesn't make it very far, and he goes immediately to a phone booth to try to call his girlfriend. So the movie is like this all the way through, where he constantly is like trying to deal with this breakup, and then eventually, like, what does he do when he does finally try to get back together with her? Is she going to be receptive to that? But even if he gets her back, the same hangups keep running up against him, where he's like he's jealous of every guy she talks to. There's just every single time he's not happy with her, and definitely not happy without her, but it told in this Albert Brooksian way. It's just wonderful thing. There's a long during this 20-minute thing, there's a long unbroken shot where he's like on his bed. His assistant editor is played by Bruno Kirby,
Oh.
and Bruno Kirby gives him 2 Quaaludes, and he takes both of them, and so he does this whole thing kind of like I did when I had those edibles and I called you that one time. He takes the 2 Quaaludes and says, there's nothing going on with me on this, but then eventually you can see that the drugs just take hold, and he's like, by the way, he's talking to Bruno Kirby, you're the best editor, your best assistant editor I've ever had. I love you, man. I love you. And he's like, you're the best, and whatever. And but there's like there's a whole long thing where he's like dealing drugs. He's taking drugs, and he's doing all these things to try to get over the breakup. The funniest, I brought this one up. One of the funniest things to me in this movie is when they show him actually editing this movie. There's like scenes in there like where he's absolutely right to cut it the way he says to cut it, but the director comes in and is like, oh, but you cut the line. I love that line that George Kennedy says. I love that line. And it's like, yeah, but if you keep that in, this doesn't make sense, and blah 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 and whatever. But there's a scene where George Kennedy's running through a hallway or whatever, and they need footsteps to match what he's doing, because it just doesn't sound good at all. And the guy who's like the head of the sound booth, he's just he steals this entire scene, just to how uninterested he is in making this scene work. And Albert Brooks is like, well, we got to have some sound on stock somewhere. And it's like, what about Hulk running? And they're like, okay, we'll get Hulk running. And so they dub Hulk running over George Kennedy running through the spaceship, and it's like, raw, raw. And he goes, he's like, what is that? Wait a minute, what is that? That's not Hulk running, that's Hulk screaming. That's what should be on the thing right there. And then he eventually just does his own sound or whatever, and they put it into the movie, and the old pro guy's like, Albert Brooks is like, what do you think, and the old pro guy's like, I think you saved the picture. But this movie's great. I think you would absolutely love this, and talk about something that could be a big recommend down the road. This is one.
Awesome. I went on a tear several years ago watching every Albert Brooks I could get my hands on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's made a lot of movies with James L. Brooks, even though they're not related, because James did broadcast news, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. And they semi sort of worked with the Simpsons when Albert Brooks was
that's right.
Doing guest voices, some of the most classic guest voices on the Simpsons ever.
Yeah, and I guess I always forget James L. Brooks was a producer on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Slab. He says Defending Your Life needs to be a big recommend.
Absolutely. It's another great one.
There's one I can't remember. I never remember the name of, where he loses his job and goes on an RV trip with his wife, who's the mom from What About Bob?
Yeah. What is that one?
I can't remember the name of it, but I've seen it twice and I really like it. Anyway, I need to watch Modern Romance. Somehow that one slipped through the net. For my second small recommend, ladies and gentlemen, I'm returning to the category of food and beverage, as Mountain Dew has just released a new flavor called Summer Freeze. And what is Summer Freeze? I'm going to tell you. It tastes like the red, white, and blue bomb pops you used to get from the ice cream truck that drove through your neighborhood. Now, listen, I'm an admitted Mountain Dew connoisseur.
Yes.
I like more of the new flavors than I dislike. The apple one that they have at Kroger does not work for me. But This one works. It tastes exactly like those flavors. It is as blue as anything you will ever drink. It looks like you're about to drink like mouthwash, but I assure you, it tastes like that sweet frozen treat from your youth. And they have it in regular and zero sugar varieties. And Mountain Dew's zero sugar game is pretty good these days. So I strongly recommend this if you are a Mountain Dew fan. Jeremy recommends a new Mountain Dew flavor. Take a drink.
Yes.
Yes, this is not the first time, and it won't be the last. But this one is good, top notch, stellar. Go get it. They at least are carrying it at Kroger right now. I haven't seen it at Publix. It might be in the gas stations, but I don't ever go inside those places. So
Yep.
there you go. More power to you.
And as Polly Walnuts says, Lost in America is that movie that Albert Brooks and Julie Haggerty.
Thank you, Paulie.
Julie Haggerty were in. Yes, I can't remember I've seen that one or not. I know I've seen at least. Is that the one where he's always talking about Easy Rider and stuff in it?
I think so. Yeah.
He does talk. He talks about Easy Rider in this movie briefly, but like he must really love Easy Rider because it seems like a thing. But yeah. Anyway, my next small recommend, a movie from 1995 starring Parker Posey called Party Girl. Did you ever see this?
I did. I don't remember a thing about it, but I saw it right when it came out.
I never saw this, and Parker Posey was an indie darling in the 90s. She was in, I mean, that was her thing. She was in all those, like, she was like the lead in a lot of these big indie films. She later on would get into some big movies here and there. Like she was in Superman Returns, I think, or something like that.
And she was in You've Got Mail.
You've Got Mail, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know where it all started. But the character she plays here is something that I don't think we had seen much of in the 90s. It's a very 90s movie, this Party Girl is, but we were used to seeing female characters who just had everything together, right? Or they could never do any wrong and whatever. And the character Parker Posey plays in this is always just a complete fuck up there for a while and has absolutely no idea what she wants to do with her life. And at the very beginning of the movie, she's being arrested because she's throwing this party that has a lot of illegal drugs and sort of all this stuff. And then she gets out and she goes to work with her godmother who works at a library. And there's this big discussion about, like, working at a library is not nearly as easy as you would think it is. And, it requires a master's degree to be a real librarian and things like that. But she's just going to be a clerk, and all she needs to do is learn the Dewey Decimal System and learn how to file things and blah, blah, blah. And that's it. But she can't even do that very well. And she just keeps on, like, going through life, fucking everything up. She's got this boyfriend played by Liev Schreiber, who's the only guy that I could recognize. I think he's the only other actor I really recognized in this. But Liev Schreiber's like her kind of boyfriend, but she's tired of him already and she's ready to move on. She's got a roommate who's a DJ. He's having a hard time finding work, but he ends up finding work at this one club because somebody else flaked out or something like that. But eventually she gets to be awesome at filing. She actually spends like an entire evening and through the morning learning the Dewey Decimal System and learning the cataloging and everything. And it becomes to the point where she is an absolute whiz at it. In fact, does it to a point that when her roommate has all these records lying all over the place, she files the records in a Dewey Decimal like thing. And of course he comes home to try to get some of his albums for tonight's DJing. And he's like, "What'd you do? You totally fucked my entire thing." And she teaches him how to find them using the Dewey Decimal System. She's got this love interest. It's this guy who sells like falafels and stuff like that. It has a falafel stand that's a kind of a fledgling falafel stand because some other like better falafel stand has like opened up at the same corner that he has. And there's
Mm.
this long line out there every day taking his customers. But Parker Posey, who's really attracted to this guy, comes up and asks for the same thing every time you see her go to this guy's cart. And eventually they sort of develop a relationship and a boyfriend girlfriend thing. But every time she seems to get something and seems to be headed in a positive direction, she can't get out of the way of her own self, basically. But I was a little worried about this movie when I first started watching. I was like, I don't know if I'm getting into this and everything. But it turned out, it really turned very funny and interesting. There's some really offbeat things that happen in this. Parker Posey's great. I love how just with her eyes, she seems to say so many things in scenes. So yeah, highly recommend Party Girl. I think it's really good movie. So
I just learned on the internet that Party Girl was the first movie to ever premiere on the internet.
really,
Yes. And that was 1995. So I remember the internet being pretty crude back then.
yes, it was.
So I'm not sure how many people watched it online.
That was for the ultra rich who could afford that 28.8 baud modem, man.
Seriously, I don't know how you could get a whole movie with the modem my dad had in 1995. That was, I mean, it was one of those like fax machine modems that make all those sounds when you go through your phone line to the internet.
And,
couldn't use your phone and the internet at the same time.
Right. And congrats to the chat who are getting the UHF references in there with Conan the Librarian and things like that. Yes.
Nice.
Don't you know the Dewey Decimal System? All right. That takes us to our big recommend, which is 1940's His Girl Friday.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
I advertised last week that this is like words being thrown at you at an extremely quick pace, and I wasn't lying, was I?
No.
According to the trivia on the IMDb of this movie, typical movies have a 90 words per minute dialogue speed, and this one has a 240 word a minute dialogue speed. There's so many things that happen so fast. Like, this was made for like people to watch back in the day and then have to come back and get all the stuff that. Luckily, we have the rewind button. We have streaming. We can do that today. But like back in the day, you had to watch this shit several times probably to get everything.
Yeah.
So yeah. So let's the plot of this is fairly bare bones, even though a lot of things happen in it and everything. So we're at a newspaper run by Walter Burns, who is Cary Grant. In this, this is just the day before an execution of a guy who's going to he was accused of killing a policeman. This is just before just the day before that's going to happen. And also on the same day, his ex-wife comes in to the newspaper. His wife is played by Rosalind Russell, Hildy Johnson, who is a star reporter on this newspaper, but she is leaving, and she's been divorced from Walter this whole time, and she's going to marry somebody else. She's going to marry this Bruce Baldwin guy, starring Ralph. It's Ralph Bellamy who plays him. They come in, they announce their intentions and blah blah blah, and but the problem for Walter in this big story with this guy who's about to get executed, they want him to get the stay of execution. They want to write a story that he got saved at the last minute. You can tell that Walter has no qualms about doing anything he can in his power to make that happen. In fact, he throws some sort of bribe out there for the governor that he would, the paper would endorse him for senator if he would just go ahead and give him the stay of execution already. So yeah, there's a lot of underhanded dealings in this newspaper. just to try to get the story that they want. Um, so on this day that there's all this news happening, his best writer, who is not who after Hildy, is at the hospital where his wife is about to give birth to twins, and he says something to the effect of like how can somebody do that in this day and age? You don't have nobody has any he's upset that this guy is like trying to witness the birth of his children instead of being on this story. So he sees that Hildy and Bruce are about to leave, and he concocts a plan to keep them here and maybe get Hildy to be on the story. And he promises to buy insurance from Bruce. Bruce is a struggling insurance salesman. They barely have any money. They only have like $500 to their name. And he gets them to stay because of that. And she gets Walter to say, I'm going to give you a certified check for $2,500. And he even says, what do you think, I'm some kind of thief? And she goes, yes. And she basically just yes. So in the meantime, so he keeps them there for a brief moment, and he thinks that's going to do it. But as the story keeps going on and on, there's a lot of stuff going on here. So the mayor and the sheriff, they want to execute the guy. They are in that camp because it's a political thing where it's a white guy who shot a black policeman.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mayor and sheriff want to go ahead and execute him for the votes, basically.
Right.
The governor I think pretty much the same, but just that's how many people want the stay after the whatever. So
right.
Pretty much the same. They're working against each other on that. So there's a lot of things that go on. And in this story, trying to get this story right, Walter keeps preventing Hildy from leaving because he gets Bruce in a whole bunch of different situations. First is a stolen watch thing. He gets his gangster friend to like plant a watch on him and claim that the watch got stolen. That keeps him back for a bit. There's another point. This was a really 1940s term that I had to look up, but he gets arrested again for mashing, is what he says. It gets Bruce arrested twice, and once is for mashing. And mashing apparently is just saying lewd things to women in the street. That's what he got arrested for on the second one. So he gets one of his friends who's a beautiful woman to go down and walk by a taxi and then claim that he said something to her as she walked past. So in the meantime, while all this delay is happening, there's so much going on with this guy who's on death row. There's a doctor who's going to set up this reenactment of the crime, and the sheriff slips him a real gun, which he uses to shoot his way out of the jail, and he escapes, and he eventually ends up in the newsroom where Hildy is, and Hildy ends up hiding him in a roll top desk. And there's a whole bunch of stuff there. The big writers room comes in there, and she's got to hide him while they come in there talking about all these different stories that they're coming up with. And you can see why Hildy is on this story and not them, because their stories that they come up with are absolutely insane, ridiculous, including one that was a bit racist, I think. They used a term that I have never heard before, and I had to look up. I was just like, oh my God, seriously. Okay. All right. They did that. Okay. But the story itself was that they were looking for this guy everywhere. So this woman who gave birth to a child, and they questioned the child, or they examined the child because they knew that he was gonna, they just like this, he had to be hiding somewhere is the punchline. But these other writers come in, and then there's this friend of the guy who she's this woman that they've painted as they've painted the death row guy as this woman as his lover, and she's just a friend. All that happened was he helped her out. I can't remember what it was that happened with that. What did he do?
He was on the street, and she brought him in and let him stay the night in her apartment. And that's how I think they became friends. That's what, again, this movie moves so fast, and it's only my first time watching it, so I'm sure I missed half of what was said, but that was my recollection, that she gave him a bed to sleep in for the night.
Right. And he didn't do anything. They weren't lovers, but she has become friends with him. And she comes up to the newsroom to yell at everybody about this and about her portrayal and everything. There's a point where she jumps out of a window to distract everybody because she sees that what is this guy's name? What is the death row guy's name?
Earl Williams.
Earl Williams, right? Yeah, Earl Williams. She jumps out of a window at one point because she sees him in the roll top desk, and she offers a distraction where all these
like a
writers
3-story drop of a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
They even debate if she's alive at the window after she jumped. That was not just a diversion. That was that shocked me. I mean, I was not expecting it.
All the writers end up descending on that particular thing because they have nothing else, basically. And then there's a whole variety of things here where the mayor and the sheriff, there's a messenger who comes in with a stay of execution, and it gets to the mayor and the sheriff, and the mayor and sheriff bribe the guy to not bring it. They tell him to bring it late is what it is. So this guy's coming from the governor, and the mayor and sheriff say, come back later after we've already done this. And they bribe him on this.
They bribe him with a job as the city planner or something.
It was something, yeah. And this guy is like, he's definitely no city planner or whatever it is that they gave him. But they do that, and eventually, so there's a point where Walter finds out about the guy in the roll top desk, and he tells him, like, when I hit the thing 3 times, that's me, and you can hit 3 times back to tell me that you're in there or whatever. And so during this big, huge argument down towards the end of the movie, he accidentally hits the roll top desk 3 times, and they find him in the roll top desk. And of course, Walter and Hildy are about to get arrested for keeping this guy in the newsroom the whole time. And then of course there's this stay of execution that comes in right at the right time, where the mayor and the sheriff are the ones who are actually in trouble by the end of it. Also during all of this, Hildy's writing a story, and it's got this poetic language. It sounds like it's going to be the best story ever written about somebody on death row. And there's a point where the story she gets the full story and everything, and she's about to write it, and poor Bruce comes back and tries to tell her that he's leaving. They're going to go to Albany. They're going to get married tomorrow. This is where their honeymoon is. They're going to live with their mom for a year, all this type of stuff. And he's trying to tell her that, yeah, we're leaving. We need to leave. And the story is too important to her. She's obviously like a newspaper person. She wants to see this through, and totally ignores Bruce during this whole thing. In fact, doesn't even realize he was in the room essentially by the time it's over. And then that's the end of her and Bruce. And Hildy goes back with Walter by the end of this. They get married. They're gonna get married. They're gonna get married, and they're going to go to Niagara Falls. And then they find the story at the very end that there's a strike in Albany, and there's that great line that says, I wonder if Bruce can put us up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably missed a few things here and there in the plot, but that's basically what it comes down to. What did you think about this movie, Jared?
I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I have a lot of thoughts. Unfortunately, I don't have notes today, so it'll all be from memory, because I watched this in a group setting instead of on my computer. But the first thing I wanted to say is I wonder, and maybe this is on the record somewhere, I wonder how much this era and type of filmmaking influenced um, Robert Altman in terms of dialogue overlapping. And I did a little trivia research on His Girl Friday, and this is one of I think it's the second movie ever that was filmed that way with dialogue overlapping until this
Yeah.
movie, and actually the one that came right before it. Everybody said their line and stopped, and the next person would say their line and stop, which is what you still see in a lot of movies. And obviously, I don't think Alton's making a comedy every time out. He certainly is with MASH. But I feel very strongly like that. I kept thinking about Robert Altman watching this movie and how much the dialogue was overlapping. And even with the added benefit of captions, they're sometimes moving so damn fast that I can't catch them. I got up. The living room in my house and the kitchen, there's no wall in between them. So I got up and went to the kitchen to put some more tea in my cup. And that was right when she jumped out the window. And my nephew was like, "Oh my gosh, you missed it." And I was like, What happened?" He was like, "She jumped out the window." And so I had to like rewind it to experience that moment. It just reminded me a lot of Arsenic and Old Lace, which for lots of good reasons. There's a lot of the same kind of talking over each other. Cary Grant, similar era, and my mom showed that movie to us a lot when we were young. So there was almost a nostalgic feeling for me watching this. I almost felt like this was familiar to me, even though I had never seen it. I love everything about the movie except that she gets back with him at the end.
Yeah.
I accept that she realizes I'm a newspaper person and Bruce is too vanilla, but Walter is nothing but an abusive dick to her this whole movie. He gives her fake money. He fucks her fiance over 3 different times, getting him arrested. He has only selfish motives all the way through. And so when they walked off and it went to the music and credits, I was like, I don't want her to end up with him.
Right.
But it was clear all movie long she wasn't going to end up with Bruce.
Right.
I did not know this until I researched, but the guy who played Bruce is Ralph Bellamy. There's a line in here where Cary Grant says there's a guy in a taxi down there who looks exactly like Ralph Bellamy. And apparently that was ad-libbed. And the studio did not want it. But they eventually let the director keep it in. I think the biggest laugh for me is early when he decides to march out and go meet Hildy's new fiance, Bruce, and he walks right up to a clearly 74-year-old man and just starts saying, "Hey, it's nice to meet you. I'm Walter. You got a great girl here in Hildy." And Bruce comes up and goes, "No, I'm Bruce." He's like, "Hey, stop bothering me. I'm talking to Bruce Baldwin right now." I was on the floor. It's just that kind of comedy. Cary Grant, is perfect for this role.
Oh, he's so good.
And there were a lot of leading ladies that turned it down because he hadn't been cast in the film yet, which is crazy to me. But yeah, I love the experience of this movie. I agree with you. I think I would have to watch it 4 or 5 times to really feel like I had caught or seen everything. Which I love. I love that they packed so much into it. Because it will reward multiple viewings, more than even just a second viewing, a third, fourth, fifth viewing. I love the restaurant scene where Bruce initially loves Walter and thinks he's a really swell guy. And I especially love the reporters. The reporters in that. It's wild to me that there's a newsroom in a prison, but I guess that makes sense if you have executions. But the way they fire off throwaway one-liners all movie long, even when they're being stepped on by Hildy talking to somebody else, those guys are freaking hysterical. I think you could watch the movie and only focus on those men and what they say and be extremely rewarded, other than the racist one. But yeah, I did spend about 5 minutes trying to place the sheriff before I realized he was the judge in Miracle on 34th Street. And also one of the reporters here is the psychiatrist in Miracle on 34th Street who declares that Chris Kringle is mentally unsound and gets him committed. So yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. The movie has almost no score because where would you put it?
Right,
You got
exactly.
people talking the entire time. And I bet the script is twice as long, 3 times as long as an average script, right? Because they say like a screenplay is on average like 90 to 110 pages, right? I
Yeah.
bet this one's 200, 250
Yeah,
pages.
it's a remake or an adaptation of The Front Page, which become a really big Broadway play or whatever in the 20s, I believe. And then I think they made a movie out of The Front Page, and then they made this movie. It used to be 2 male leads that were in this in The Front Page, and then Howard Hawks, who directed this movie, was doing auditions, and his secretary, a woman, was doing a lot of the lines, and he liked how some of these lines came out from a woman's voice. So that's why he ended up recasting that Hildy character as a woman. And Rosalind Russell's performance in this, which is great, obviously,
Yes.
clearly inspired Jennifer Jason Leigh in Hudsucker Proxy. This is I mean, if you can't escape it if you're as familiar with the Hudsucker Proxy as we are, and this was a big recommend a few months ago. You cannot help but hear echoes of what Jennifer Jason Leigh is going to do with her character in that movie later on. There's a anecdotal thing here about Ralph Bellamy. First off, I want to talk about with Ralph Bellamy. He plays a virtually the same character in another Cary Grant movie called The Awful Truth, which had Irene Dunn as the divorced. They were both divorced in that. And Ralph Bellamy is the suitor in that movie as well, as 2 divorcees spar back and forth in that one. So it's kind of funny to see him here and in this again, like sort of back to back. But I heard a story from my dad once that his dad was hanging out with this kid back in the day. And this kid said that I'm going to run away and I'm going to go to Hollywood and I'm going to be a big star. And apparently my dad's dad was hanging out with Ralph Bellamy. And I looked at the Wikipedia for him, and it said that he ran away from home at 15. So I'm well, that kind of backs it up a little bit.
Wow.
Although again, don't know for a fact if that's what actually occurred, but thought that was kind of cool.
Well, I'm updating the Wikipedia right now to say that that's a fact.
Yes, Chris's grandfather, who he never met, often palled around with Ralph Bellamy as teenagers. Let's see. And there's another inside joke in here that's funny too, which is when the mayor or the sheriff, I can't remember who, tells him that he's through. Yeah, he tells Walter that he's through, and he's like, "Well, the last person who told me that was Archie Leach before he slit his throat or whatever." And if you didn't know that Cary Grant was born Archibald Leach, that's a nice little inside joke that he throws in to this movie as well. Really love that. Let's see, what else do I have in here? I have a bunch of lines written down on here, but I don't think I'm going to go through all of those. There are so many jokes thrown at you in this movie. I mean, again, a repeat viewing is going to be necessary. It's going to be on the order if you want to get everything that's out of this. And there's sometimes where they say things so fast that you have to hear the sentence back and forth to really know what they're talking about in there. Because especially when they're talking about, whether or not they're going to execute this guy and there's so many different things that go on with that. I was like, okay, wait a minute. Do they want him to be dead, or does the governor just want him to be? I don't know who wants what. So there's a lot of times where there's like going on there. But anyway, I think it's time for the super secret double feature.
The super secret double feature.
Be very, very quiet.
Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
Oh, that's my responsibility. Good thing I thought about it.
Good.
I have already seen the chat mention 2 that I'm not going to choose that this movie highly reminded me of: Arsenic and Old Lace and Hudsucker Proxy. As you mentioned, Hudsucker as well. those both felt like kindred spirit movies to this. But I'm not going to be able to super secret double feature the tone of this movie because it's so distinctly itself, right? With the talking over each other and the 240 words per minute and the jokes flying everywhere, and you need to watch it 10 times. And I'm not going to make the super secret double feature His Girl Friday again. I'm not going to do that. That would be weird. But I am going to go with a little scene Ron Howard movie called The Paper.
Ooh, yeah.
It's Michael Keaton, Glenn Close, Robert Duvall, and Marissa Tomei.
I haven't seen this movie since it came out.
I haven't either. I don't know if it's great. I remember enjoying it. It's the similarities are we're focused on newspapermen trying to get to the bottom of a story about a murder. It takes place in 24 hours, whereas His Girl Friday takes place in I think less than that, but close. Yeah, I just think that would be a really good newspaperman journalism foray. His Girl Friday, and then The Paper. The Paper is kind of a dramedy. It's not going to be a laugh out loud laugh riot. There's not slapstick stuff in there. But I think there's enough thematically and story-wise similar that they would make a good pairing.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoy that. I need to see The Paper again because that's a movie that after it came out, it wasn't a big hit, but there were a lot of people who especially in the 90s would say they would remember that movie fondly, basically. So I need to watch that again for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, what is next week's homework, Jeremy?
All right, folks, next week's homework, I'm going to give you a movie that has a 33% Rotten Tomatoes rating.
Damn.
I believe they got it wrong.
Damn.
We're going to go with The 13th Warrior. This is John McTiernan, one of my favorite directors of all time. And it's based on a book by Michael Crichton called Eaters of the Dead.
Yeah.
And there is even a little bit of mystery about this film because Crichton didn't like everything McTiernan did and did some reshoots on his own.
Oh, really?
And so for years, it's been considered that. But then McTiernan recently said, no, that's my movie. That's definitely my movie. So that's why I say there's mystery. There's allure. Anyway, this is a Beowulf adjacent tale. There's a Beowulf character in here. And Antonio Banderas is maybe controversially playing a Middle Easterner.
Okay.
And he is the son of an important man, but he is a poet. He is not a warrior, but he is sent with Beowulf and his gang to go on this mission because it's been foretold that a 13th warrior was needed. And then he ends up volunteering. From my perspective, this movie is about his journey from peaceful poet to badass warrior, and the steps along the way. There is a worm of fire that's attacking villages and killing people, mutilating them, and Beowulf and his crew are coming in to try and kill this monster. And that's all I really want to say. I certainly hope you guys don't hate it, but I think it's way the hell better than 33%. And I have not personally seen it in 5 or 6 years. It's one of those that came out, didn't make any money, and went away, and just people forgot about it. But I would like to bring it to your attention. So there you go.
Awesome. All right. Well, this movie is
on Tubi. So that is an ad-supported free streaming service. You can also pay $3.99 to rent it from anywhere else without ads. So there you go. Yeah, The 13th Warrior.
All right. Well, I think this is going to be it for the show today because I don't think we have any questions that we gathered for this week because it's been a busy week, guys. Yep. Sorry about that. But sure, questions will return next week. So next week, The 13th Warrior. Can't wait to dive back into that one. That'll be fun. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. And then we got the spam. Look at the spam. Oh, the spam is coming in through the chat. Welcome, spam. But that's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
Why is my mic so far down? Hello? Hello? Why is my mic so far? I think I turned it up too high. Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! What's up? What's up? What's up? Remember when that was like everybody was doing that for like 6 months?
I do.
That was crazy.
I do remember that.
I believe they have been trying to get back to that kind of popularity in the pop culture lingo for decades. Because they had that one, and then they did the Budweiser. Those were both quoted infinitely. And they've never gotten back to that. They've never had a catchphrase as good.
They had. Well, I don't know if it's the same. I don't know which beer did what, but that Dilly Dilly was a thing there for a bit too.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if that was the same beers.
You guys beat us, man. The Braves beat us.
Yeah,
2-1.
They did. I mean, it's both of those, all three of those. I mean, the third game was a blowout, but like in the seventh inning, it became a blowout. It's like really
Right.
all the games were really close, and anything could have happened. And you can never really take a like I know that the goal of teams are to win series. That's a big thing for them, but like, if you'd gotten swept, or if I had got, my team got swept, it's like, play better next time,
It's funny because almost every major league manager, unless they're getting angry at an ump and getting thrown out, whenever it cuts to them in the dugout, no matter what has just happened, there's no facial expression. You can't. He's not getting excited or angry, and I think it's just because it's a long freaking season. And so, yeah, that guy just struck out again, but, he's going to have 500 more at-bats and, one game at a time. It's hard for me as a fan. I don't know. I mean, I guess these guys have been in the game for a lot longer than I have. But,
yeah.
I get upset about almost every strikeout.
Yeah. Well, and the philosophy of hitting has changed over the years, where it used to be embarrassing to strike out.
Right.
And it's not anymore, because the idea is if you're a hitter, you want to swing as hard as you can at a strike and hit it very deep somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you miss, well, c'est la vie. The approach says over the long run, you're going to add a significant amount of offense that you normally wouldn't. And so, back in the 80s, you had people like Tony Gwynn and Wade Boggs and Pete Rose and all these guys who were just like, let's just get a single, and and that's fine. Yeah. That's fine. You got on base, but you aren't guaranteeing much by getting on base by hitting a single. You're when you hit doubles and homers and stuff like that, that's where you get your offense and everything. That's where the philosophy has changed. So Suzuki, Ichiro Suzuki was another one that was always like, let's slap a hit somewhere to left field. And from what I understood, he had the kind of power that he could hit 30 home runs if he wanted to. He just didn't. And, you can make a Hall of Fame career by just kind of slapping balls around and whatever. And, you're hard to get out. But at the same time, how much offense did you leave on the table when you just hit singles?
I think I used to, I'm generalizing, but I think they used to play more small ball, right? Like I remember the stolen base numbers were just ridiculous. Like Willie McGee and Vince Coleman, these guys would steal like, I want to say 50 or 60 bases.
Vince Coleman stole 100 and something one year, and so did Ricky Henderson.
Yeah. Ugh, It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like those numbers for stolen bases are quite that high anymore.
No. I
This
mean,
current era.
I think the highest you get nowadays, like there was one guy who may have gotten 80 or something in the no, I don't know. But yeah, it's usually like 40 is like your top, is where it tops out, I think, for the most part. I haven't looked much at stolen base things, but yeah, now with the way they have, pitchers can't throw over more than once,
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
Or they can, they just have to get them out on that next throw, or the guy advances to the next base.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of new strategery happening with these new rules that I find fascinating. I hate the loopholes that they've already created to get around the shift rule.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, I understand the argument of we'll just hit it to the opposite field and then they won't be able to do that. But not every baseball player is capable of hitting to the opposite field.
Yeah.
It's like not every baseball player is capable of hitting righties and lefties.
They're going to have to set up some border lines if they want to do that. They're going to have to like carve the infield up and just put lines there, and you have to stay here if they really want this no shift thing to happen. And that's easy enough to do. I know that. I mean, it's just, you're going to have to throw in 2 extra lines on the field, basically. That's it.
Yeah.
So
look a little silly for the first few years.
Oh yeah, for sure. But then you prevent that from happening. You could also do the same. I guess you could do the same with the outfield. Make sure that the left fielder and the right fielder stay where they're supposed to be, so that you don't have that extreme shift where the left fielder runs over to right field or whatever, that type of thing. But
plays between first and second base, dropped back.
But it's I mean, if you want to do that, you're gonna have to make boundaries, and of course they found loopholes on that because there's no boundaries, so you can just do whatever you want basically. You can't do it the same way, but you can do it a different way.
It's like whenever they make a law, when some evangelical politician makes a law that is like supposedly going to favor Christians, but then the Church of Satan comes out and says, hey, here we are. We're also an established religion, so now you have to fly our flag as well.
Yeah.
It's like you thought you made the perfect rule, but you just created a new loophole is all you've done.
Yeah.
So they'll probably adjust the shift rule with more words instead of boundaries, and they'll just find another new way to do it.
Yeah.
Dickheads.
Yeah, I know.
We almost showed my nephew Liar Liar last night.
Yeah.
But we realized, I mean, he's a college student, so I'm sure he's seen plenty of movies. And I know he goes to the theater a lot to see movies. But I just felt like, as soon as my wife said, I don't think he's ever seen Liar Liar, I went right to, like, the edgiest stuff in that movie. Like riding her like Seattle Slew, and I thought it would help my career if I could make her squeal. Just all the sex related. Anyway,
How old is your nephew?
And then ultimately, he's 19 and he can handle it
for sure.
They're a pretty religious family.
Okay.
And so I don't want to be the one responsible for like not knowing where the lines are drawn. Like they showed in The Matrix a couple years back.
Yeah.
But there's no sex in that.
No. There's hardly anything except a lot of violence.
Yeah, a lot of gun violence.
Yeah.
And I mean, America in general is okay with gun violence in films, but not boobies. So they may run along those same lines. And so anyway, by the time we thought it out, it was too late.
I'll tell you what, man, I've told you this before, but the biggest like edge of my seat thing for me when it involved niece and nephew was when the nephew I think he was 15, maybe a little bit younger, and we popped Kingsman in. I was just like, all right, I mean, his dad's there, so like, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to be the guy who tells you not to watch this movie. And I had heard, I already heard like a whole bunch of other movies he had watched. So I was like, this isn't as bad. But, there's like a scene, there's a lot of bad scenes in that movie, but, as far as like kids watching it, but the very end, that very last shot where the girl like points her ass up at the camera.
Yeah.
I was like, damn. And he's and they've already agreed that they're gonna do anal.
Yes.
I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is the last shot of this movie.
I went to see that Clooney movie, The American.
Oh yeah,
with my father-in-law.
Oh, I remember you telling me this.
And there's like a 5-minute sex scene where they are groaning and moaning and writhing, and it was awkward as hell.
Yeah,
I was just like, we're both probably enjoying this on some level, but we don't want to be with each other while we're enjoying this on some level. That movie's not as bad as I think the reviews made it seem. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've never seen it. I remember Hollywood 27 had it. We had it playing at one point, but I never saw it.
Yeah, he's a retired hitman that gets called in for a job, but then there's also someone trying to kill him, and he's bopping around in little towns in, I think, Italy. And it's pretty decent.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not going to make it a main recommend on Recotopia or anything.
Right, right.
At least until I rewatch it and make sure. But the one thing I remember the most was that sex scene. But because Clooney doesn't usually do a lot of sex scenes, that J-Lo one,
Out of Sight.
Forgot the name of that movie. And Out of Sight. That's hardly even a sex scene. They're just kind of being sexy, and then he's under the sheets the next morning.
Yeah.
And so I was not going into a Hitman movie with Clooney expecting all the groaning.
Yeah.
It's like Forrest Gump, like hearing his mom having sex with the principal groaning.
You know, I'm all about that type of stuff in movies. And I somehow missed that one. And I also missed, I think we were both working in Hollywood 27 when Original Sin came out.
Oh my God.
And like you told me, like there was like some really raw things in that one, and I was like, I should watch that, and then I never did because it had such bad reviews that
it's so bad. And I had to watch that with our co-manager, who I won't say her name, but probably clinically insane and had a small child with a projectionist.
Yeah,
Do you remember this
yes,
person?
I know who you're talking about.
She was in there with the child.
Oh, geez.
Like the 3 or 4-year-old child. And then this is also famously, I built this print, but the movie has such a jarring cut 3 reels in to, I went upstairs to make sure I hadn't put the movie, I stopped the movie to make sure I hadn't put the movie together wrong, because it just, she's like, you're like watching this story, and then suddenly Angelina is narrating it. It's all been flashback, and she's in nun prison or something. And I was like, what the fuck just happened?
Nun prison.
I don't remember. It's a bad movie.